Welcome, Uncommoners. This is Drew Cutcomb with Uncommon Entrepreneurs signing in live today with Bianca Amor Wakeford. We are out here in beautiful Mayahuez at a project she's working on, and we'll get into that during the call. So yeah, appreciate everybody who's signing in and so forth like that. Feel free to comment and leave notes and have questions. We'll be listening to that as we go through this and, be responding. We have David there in the notes that's going to be looking. So feel free. This is meant to be engaging. This is meant to be for you and for the community and so forth. This is a newer initiative that we're starting in which we're highlighting entrepreneurs that are successfully pivoting their businesses during this uncertain time, to say the least. And so our two speakers today, Bianca and Eric, will all have 30-minute time slots. So there'll be a few-minute commercial break at the end, and then we'll be jumping into Erik's interview and so forth like that. But yeah, this is meant to be community-driven and to give you value. So if you know of somebody that you want to, if you think you have a service or a message that would be useful to the community, we started Uncommon Entrepreneurs about a little over a year ago in San Juan, Puerto Rico, as a way for entrepreneurs to network together. That because of the tax incentive environment, because of just the beautiful beaches and the weather, and there's a lot of advantages that come with what Puerto Rico offers. And because of that, there's a really amazing ecosystem down here. And, because of that, we're going to be highlighting a lot of people as we go over in time. So today we're sitting here with Bianca, a friend. We've gone back a few months now and had some great interactions. So on today's Lunch and Learn, we're going to learn from Bianca Amor Wakeford, talking about the future of living and how to develop your own roadmap for a purpose-driven lifestyle. We're at Villa Vista in Mayahuez, which is a creative base camp for micro community experiment and one of her current design projects. Bianca is an island-born Filipino-Canadian entrepreneur who started her first business at 13 years old. She dropped out of high school to scale her chain of retail stores to 12 locations, 30 million in annual revenue, 150 plus employees, and offices in China and the Philippines before exiting at age 26. Today, Bianca is navigating the waters between purpose and product fit as a co-founder and chief experience officer at Homebase, a local real estate technology startup. So welcome to the show, Bianca.
Thanks, Drew. It's nice to be here.
Yeah.
Getting some sun and some breeze.
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful, beautiful weather. So let's get into your background and starting kind of with your young entrepreneurial journey and so forth when you were in Canada. So maybe start us off by walking through that experience.
Yeah, well, so I started the business with my family at 13, and my parents are both entrepreneurs, and both actually farmers, one from the Philippines and one from Canada. And growing up, I had worked with them, and my sister and I had both worked with them very closely in their mail order business, which we ran from our home. So from our properties in our farm in Canada and our farm in Arizona, where we spent the winters, we actually ran our business out of our house. And when I was 13, we kind of made the switch from mail order, e-commerce before there was an E before it.
Got it.
We made the switch to retail, starting out in swap meets in Arizona, actually. And at 13, we sat down, had a conversation as a family saying, hey, if we're going to dive into this, this is what it's going to take.
Sure.
We're going to be quarter owners each. And do you want to do it? Yeah.
That's great.
And that was what I knew.
So how did that work? I mean, that's pretty impressive to scale. And I know you were on the road and you were flying a lot. Maybe what's some experiences you gained from it?
Oh, man. Exposure to the world, like before I turned 17, I was traveling back and forth between the US and Canada, especially doing trade shows in Vegas, trade shows in Chicago. When I was 17, started traveling to China in order to do our purchasing direct from factories there and to buy discounted items there, like factory closeouts. And by the time I was maybe 22, I was spending 4 months a year in China, 1 month each quarter. So back and forth.
Got it. Interesting. So as you said, you dropped out of high school, but you really stepped into a whole educational side of things, of like real life experiences. You know, how looking back, I mean, everybody kind of has interesting choices right now. Would you have recommended that? What was that experience part?
You know, it wasn't as difficult of a decision actually as one might think. And part of the reason for that is that we were already early adopters of alternative education. And so when I started fifth grade, I actually started doing school online. And before then, I had been calling my teachers, you know, 6 months of the school year and going over homework. And so by the time I was 16, you know, I was only spending 3 hours a day on school. It was online. It wasn't nearly as interesting as what it was, you know, that I was doing in my everyday life. And I just had a conversation with myself that what is it that I want to do with my life and how am I spending my time now in order to achieve that goal? And what I wanted to do was build a business, was to find things that people love, to be
Yeah.
challenged every single day. And I just didn't see that the time I would be investing in school was really going to lead me where I wanted to be. Actually, the only career that I had interest in, you know, traditional career was actually being an architect. And that was the only reason, you know, for me to really consider, continuing to go to school.
Yeah.
Um, but then I realized, you know, what the first 10 years of being an architect was really like, and decided that wasn't maybe for me.
A grind to get to the top. I
Yeah.
get it. So at 26, you come to the conclusion you're moving on. Kind of what was the motivation for the transition? What kind of like was the next steps kind of came here?
You know, it's just as we're talking about it, about 10 years from when I had raised myself the question that I want to do and now. And so when I was 26, I went to a university event that the Entrepreneurs Organization held in Penang, Malaysia. And I'd been part of the Entrepreneurs Organization for a few years by then, one of the youngest ever members. And had learned so many things about how to build businesses, what culture was, like these different ways of doing things that I wasn't learning in my own business, you know, where my mentors and where the people that supported me were my parents.
Sure.
And I remember when I got to Penang, and I didn't even know really what the topic of the university was, but I really loved Asia, and I haven't been to Malaysia yet, so I was like, let's do it. My goal was to actually go to one university a year, and I realized, you know, at the first day there that the topic was social entrepreneurship. And I had never heard of this idea that the business that you were building was the business that could have the positive impact. Until then, my whole plan had been to work really hard for 15, you know, maybe 5 to 10 more years, walk out with, let's say, $20 million, and then do what I wanted to do to have an impact. So as soon as I realized that, oh my God, I can just live my purpose every single day. I can, you know, bring together small business, community, and sustainability, which are really my three things that I wanted to focus my life on. I could do that every single day. And for me, once I become aware of something, I can't not think about it every single moment. You know, at that moment, I couldn't go back to the way things were.
Yeah.
And my entire reality changed. And within 3 weeks, I had written a letter to my business partner, who was my dad, who I had just committed to another 5 years of building this business with, and said, here's what's happened. I don't know what to do. Here's some ideas of how to go about it. Like, you know, let's have this conversation. And I was faced at that moment with the possibility that my dad would never talk to me again.
Wow.
And my forum that I had flown back from Asia and gone to meet with, I said, "Hey guys, I have this problem. You know, I'd love to take your time during this day and a half that we're together.
Yeah.
And my end result is I want a letter that I can send and feel like I've communicated everything I need to communicate." And when I was asked that question, you know, are you okay with never speaking to this person that you've built this business with? You spent half of your life building this business, and the previous half of your life learning how to do that. And I didn't have a choice.
Interesting. Okay. So I guess it's a cliffhanger. What was the result? What
What was
happened?
the result? Oh,
How's the relationship?
family business is complicated. And it was difficult, for a period of 3 months. We had a hard time having a conversation that wasn't around daily business operations. And, I think I really hurt his feelings. And at that point in time, my sister and my mom had both been out of the business for quite a few years. They'd already left, and it was just the two of us left. And a lot of the things that I had learned in the entrepreneurs organization and learned as I grew and found new mentors and started talking, I'd been trying to implement some of these changes with, my dad as my business partner. And, that it had been a tough few years. We were doing really well as a business, but the personal relationship was really struggling. And it was really challenging. We couldn't really talk without a lawyer present. And so for 90 days, it was really challenging. I woke up every day not really knowing what was going to happen and knowing that I had made the right decision, but not seeing any evidence of that.
Until it played out.
Yeah. And eventually what happened is, we had a meeting, actually with our accountant, not with our lawyer. And I said, listen, there's 3 ways I think we can go about this. This is the one I prefer, but any of them will work for me. And honestly, just going in and showing that I had really thought through it, that I had thought through the different strategies, that I had an idea of how to make this work for both of us, I think was what flipped the switch and had him willing to work with me again,
That's amazing testimony. Okay, cool. So transitioning maybe some years, we're sitting here in sunny Puerto Rico. How did that kind of manifest? Like, what's Puerto Rico to you? How what brought you here?
It's definitely home, and I've been here for somewhere between like 18 and 24 months, and it's taken me, I think, a little bit of time to settle into that. Partly because since I left my business, I have been moving since then. I think that I haven't spent more than 12 months in one home, and taking time to build that has taken me time. But the last 6 years, I have been experimenting with some different businesses that interested me. At one point I started a personal growth retreat for women that were going through a transition, whether that was empty nesting or wanting to change a career or having some sort of loss. And I started a boutique retail store, did a subscription box business. One of the most fun things I did was I invested in and was essentially an extremely hands-on advisor and COO for a little biotech startup that was making transdermal patches with hemp and CBD. Hemp, CBD, and cannabis as well in Washington. And so spent a couple years, really getting to understand that industry, the cannabis and CBD industry, and understand hyper-personalization, which I think is really like the magic for a product like hemp and CBD is that you can hyper-personalize that. And then all of these different things for me were really experiments. I'm a very experimental person. And I experiment, I observe, I implement, and I just cycle through it.
Yeah, that's great because you're doing that to find your kind of niche. One area, so maybe to transition to talking about community, co-living, and kind of where Homebase comes, where the project you're working on at the moment. Maybe starting with community, what does that mean to you? What is co-living? What is the significance of that?
Yeah, community, I think community is the container that holds people, that interact with each other. And growing up, my communities were my farm, the farm that we lived on, and our businesses, and to a much, much smaller extent, school. But only spending 2 months of the school year in class, I didn't really have a chance to build that community. So for me, building community or the search for community had been such a part of my life, feeling very secluded and kind of on my own.
Yeah.
And, at a time when the internet was becoming not already here. So it really has been, such a focus of my life. And then co-living, co-living is an interesting subject because it's such a buzzword right now.
Yeah.
And but what my experience has been with it is when I moved to Puerto Rico, I moved in with my former husband and a couple of the people that he had been working with, and they had all moved from the States to Puerto Rico into a house, Templo, which some of you may know.
Yeah.
And it was an incubator for businesses. You know, we lived together, we worked together, we built businesses. 3 businesses really came out of that, and ours was one of them. And kind of how Homebase came to be and how Villa Vista came to be really came from this idea of co-living, which is almost like, I think, a life incubator. You know, where we choose, I believe that where we choose to spend our time and who we use to spend our time with, and a lot of studies and really smart people back this up, like that's what shapes what you do. And for me, you know, for the last 2 years, I've intentionally chose to live with the people that I'm building businesses with. Because there are just some things that happen outside of the office, and, you know, those 2 a.m. conversations when you're all staying up thinking about the exact same thing and how to deal with it, like that's really where the magic happens.
Excellent. I know we'll be cycling through a couple video clips that I filmed earlier this morning of kind of this first one of her projects, the Villa Vista. And it's a beautiful place. I came in last night, and you know, it's roomy and relaxing and comfortable, and I can see where you're coming from, where it could be a place of, there's different nooks where you can be, we're taking a call or reading a book or working on what you're working on, and kind of come together to whiteboard out ideas and come together around a dinner table at night and exchange ideas, exchange that flow. Yet it's still a high level of limiting distractions and a high level of productivity with people that you're kind of building something with. Is that, I mean, feel free to elaborate, but is that kind of was the vision?
Absolutely, yeah. When we moved out of the house in Guaynabo, which is where this had all started, or the Puerto Rico journey had started for us, you know, I had a really good idea of exactly what kind of container we needed in order to best optimize our goals and what it was that we needed, and taking into consideration, you know, the fact that there was myself and my husband at the time, working together at the time as well. And then one of my co-founders, Steven, and my other co-founder, Ernesto, whose girlfriend and baby also lived with us.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of individual needs that as people that we had, you know, as individuals, as families, and also as business owners. And so, you know, there were only 5 properties on the island that were available that really fit my criteria. And it took us, you know, a month or so to kind of make that decision and jump in, but it has been life changing.
Amazing. So tell us a little bit more about like Homebase and the vision and where you guys are heading with that, and how this maybe plays a role.
Yeah, well, so Homebase kind of came to be as, you know, my company had moved here. We were working on a wearable technology product that we had been, you know, working on for quite a while, and honestly just couldn't find product market fit, especially for a hardware product that we needed to build. And the place that we could actually find the highest product market fit wasn't in alignment with my values.
Got it.
And we were like, if we're going to do this, you know, our customer is going to be these large companies in this industry. And the environmental impact was just something that I was like, this, I'm not if this is the business you want to build, I can't build this.
You weren't in ecology with it. It didn't line up with your values.
Yeah. And so we had last summer, my co-founders and I had a conversation and said, listen, what's important to us?
Yeah.
You know, we're looking for a magical moment. Like, our customers have to have a magical experience, because that means we had something special.
Yeah. And
so looking for that, with these being the things that we care about, what is it going to be? And the area we actually all overlapped on was education. You know, Ernesto having a son, me having a really complicated, I think, journey with education, and also understanding that it's such a critical piece of a community. I think that's one of the core foundations of a strong, thriving community is education.
Yeah.
You know, through the journey of that, we looked at some in-home daycare businesses, micro school startups, and did a couple MVP tests. Actually, we had done. We were part of Grupo Guayacan's enterprise program, which was really a great way for me to get to know the small business community here on the island. and also taught us a lot. And we did Y Combinator Startup School a couple times as well. And the thing we learned from that was to iterate quickly. You know, observe, experiment, implement, cycle through it fast. And so we, in the space of about 90 days, tested out a couple different business ideas around this idea of education. And there were other companies working in this space, some really well-funded companies in the US. And I still think the idea of alternative education, especially as is being proven right now, is part of the future. That is part of the future of living, is how do people go to school? But what we were finding, for building a technology startup, that can't be the only thing that matters, right? Sure. And so what we actually found is the common problem that all of these people had, whether it was the businesses, whether it was like an in-home daycare provider or a homeschool teacher or whatever it was, is that it's really hard to build a business out of your home.
Yeah.
There are a lot of rules and regulations that are unique per city, per state, per country. And it was one of the biggest challenges to growth that we heard from both these providers and from the people who had been working in the space for a couple of years. And so that was kind of the moment where we said, okay, maybe what we're looking at is how do we help people who, like us, are building a business out of their home? For us, we had to pay, at Temple, I think a full year's rent up front, here 6 months at a time. And that is just not an option that is available to most entrepreneurs. And so you may be able to start doing it and apologize later and get away with it for some period of time. But the landlord always has the right to not renew your lease, which is kind of what has been happening in some of these other in-home businesses. And so that's really where Homebase was born, was taking a step back in the equation and saying, maybe this is where we can solve the problem, is in the home. And for me, I think that it also leads back to community. I think a lot of people don't want to rent their space out to somebody who's starting a business or to somebody who has kids coming into their home as part of their business because they don't understand them, they don't trust them. How do we know if you're going to succeed? And so that barrier between that barrier in the community, I think, is something that needs to be addressed overall, and that was really part of the experiment.
Nice, excellent. Well, good. So just in kind of wrapping up, how could somebody find you? How does somebody do that?
Yeah, well, simplest thing, I guess, is Instagram. So we'll just share the link. It's at lucky_kuniho, Kuneho, or just search Bianca Wakeford, I guess. And I have a link to Villa Vista if you want to check out what we're doing here. And then our startup Homebase, we're essentially doing Airbnb, like a platform like Airbnb, the simplicity of using Airbnb for residential leasing.
Nice.
So virtual tours, you can submit your property online, you can sign a lease online, you can pay the rent online with an automatic subscription. It's just to really ease the flow between landlords and people who are renting. And that's at renthomebase.com.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, good. Appreciate you coming on and so forth. And feel free to check out what she's up to.
Thanks, Drew. Thanks, everyone.
So kind of in this. Welcome to Uncommon Entrepreneurs 3.0. My name is Drew. Kind of set up for the next interview with Erik. You're not going to want to miss it. He's going to be talking about holistic eating habits, talking about nootropics, talking about how your gut health is tied to your brain health and everything like that. So we'll get into it shortly. Welcome to Uncommon Entrepreneurs 3.0. My name is Drew. We formed Uncommon Entrepreneurs in September 2019 as a way to create a networking atmosphere to unify the local Puerto Rican entrepreneurial eco center. We're here today in beautiful San Juan, Puerto Rico, shooting. We're pivoting in some ways. The business had started with us bringing 100 to 200 entrepreneurs together on a monthly basis to network and meet together, etc., and exchange ideas, with the idea of bringing people that are down here for ACT 2022, those that have moved for other reasons, and those that are in the local Puerto Rican community all together to exchange ideas, etc. So now that we've entered this new normal where everybody is at home and looking for ways to pivot and to adjust and etc., we still have a need to connect as a community and share ideas and share skills and share details that we all bring together. So we're launching a new Lunch and Learn series where you have the opportunity to tune in on a weekly basis at 1 p.m. live and catch a 20-30 minute clip of a local entrepreneur, for the most part, that is talking about skills that they've developed, that of how they're pivoting, how they're making moves, what tools they're using in today's structure, etc. So you can find it live on Facebook. You can find it live on YouTube, and then we'll be reposting it on our YouTube page for Uncommon Entrepreneurs, so you can see below on the details on how to subscribe and all that type of detail. We're going to be interviewing many different local leaders in this community. If you personally have a message to share that you think would be beneficial to the audience with a skill that you've mastered, etc., or perspective on how you see the economy heading, or have a product or service that you think that would be good for this community to be aware of, feel free to reach out to us at the details below, and we can communicate with you on that. Or if you have somebody you recommend that should be speaking, let us know about that too in the details. And as we see names getting repeated in industries that you're looking to get more information on coming up, we'll make sure to target interviews around those themes. So our objective is very simple: to connect locally within this ecosystem that is San Juan, and to be an example for the rest of the world. So if you're not down here, you can see how you could build a similar community where you're at, where we're connecting these local entrepreneurs with different skill sets and backgrounds to help each other, overcome this uncertain time in history. This is who we are and this is who we're not, to see if this connects with you, because this isn't for everybody. We are for people that are solution-minded versus problem-minded. We're for people that are for collaboration versus competition. We're for people that are with new ideas, open-mindedness versus old thinking that got us to where we have at the current moment. We're for a growth mindset. We're for learning versus just fixed mindset. We're for abundance versus scarcity. We're for faith versus fear. We're for acceptance versus judgment. We're for free enterprise versus government control regulation. We're for mentorship, passing on to the next generation versus hoarding everything for ourselves and the talents that we've gathered, etc. So continue to tune in. We're going to be listing our live events as they come along in the coming weeks, and jump in. This is meant to be for the community to collaborate. We want your feedback. We want the type of information you want to hear, so that you can be learning right alongside us. So here's to the future. Welcome back. We're going to be live with Erik. How you doing today, Erik?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you joining. So yeah, we're gonna get into it. Another great interview. Erik's buddy. We've been on in like a mastermind in Puerto Rico for the last few months and exchanged quite a few neat ideas. And when it comes to nutrition and nootropics and just functional holistic living, I've learned a lot from you so far. So I'm excited to have you drop some nuggets of wisdom on here. And appreciate everybody that's tuning in. We're being ambitious and doing this outside, and third time doing this, but it's rolling and we're doing good. So feedback is welcome. Put it in the comments. Like, share this. I mean, this is meant for the community. This is meant for you. So we welcome that and appreciate everybody that's tuning in. You're definitely going to get a lot out of Erik and what he has to do. So Erik Levi is a certified functional nutritional therapy practitioner, holistic health coach, and founder of holisticnootropics.com. You want to read it, pretty in-depth articles he's wrote, which is a blog focused on holistic cognitive enhancement through diet and lifestyle. As a health coach, Erik helps people use nutrition to manage and improve chronic health conditions. His programs are entirely based on a person's individual needs and centered around improving digestion, reduced food cravings, and optimizing your body's detoxification capacities. Results include weight loss, increased energy, improved mental clarity, and overall better health and mood. And so, so we'll kind of get into it. I know you've got a podcast too, Holistic A-Hole on podcast and YouTube. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, appreciate you getting in. So maybe let's get into kind of your history of how you got into nutrition and, kind of catch us up to speed where that interest and passion came from.
Yeah, I've had a pretty wild ride. Anybody who knew me, I would say even 10 years ago, maybe like 12 years ago, if I was to tell them that I was a health coach now, they'd be like, Erik, are we talking about the same Erik? Because, I always thought that I was doing the right thing, being healthy, eating the right foods. Like, I'd go to work, I'd bring my lean cuisine. From time to time I'd have a salad. I would eat things that were low fat, and I thought I was being healthy. And then what happened was I was living in Arizona and I moved to the East Coast, and to get there I took a 5-week road trip. I could have went just across the country, but I decided to just kind of go all the way from Phoenix to Florida and then up the Eastern Seaboard. And about midway through that trip, I got sicker than I'd ever been in my life. I had what felt to me like a pretty catastrophic gut issue pop up. And, little did I know that there were warning signs about that along the way. But, as just a dude in his mid-20s, I couldn't put those pieces together. I didn't know that there were certain indicators that I was suffering with, serious gut issues that had just been brewing and brewing. And it didn't help that before I took my road trip, I got a flu shot, which I think complicated matters. But, that's another conversation for another day. And I ended up, because I was couch surfing, and I literally ended up in the worst pain of my life, laying on somebody's floor, a stranger's floor in Miami, and my body just completely gave up. It just completely quit on me. And I went to the doctor, and I ended up paying $1,500 for them to put 2 fingers in my butthole to tell me that they gotta do some surgery or I gotta ride this one out. And I didn't have that money at the time. And I was lucky to have a family friend in Florida who took me in and helped me rehab. And really it came down to my body needed rest and nutrition. And so that was the first, and that's an issue that still is with me to this day, that I have to consciously work to manage, because if I don't, it will flare up and it will be a serious problem. And from that point forward is when I really started to kind of explore this idea of the connection between nutrition and the body. And eventually that brought me to, a few years later, doing just this massive gut, how do you say it? Like a gut overhaul, basically the first real health protocol I'd ever done. And I tell you, man, like it changed my entire perspective on health, on well-being, on everything, because it worked. And I didn't know this was a thing. I only did it because my wife was doing it. And you can't have your wife do something and then you not do it. That doesn't lead to a happy household. So I begrudgingly did it and changed my entire life and my entire outlook. And when I had that moment of starting to put gut health together with well-being, with mental health, with physical health, with stamina, with strength, with all of these things that, as you get older, you start to pride yourself on having, because that's the only way you can live a happy life. That's when I dove headfirst into this world of health and nutrition. And it's a wormhole that just never ends. And the more you learn, the more questions you have, the deeper you get into it. And for me, it led me to getting a certification in functional holistic nutritional therapy, which is an amazing certification to have, and becoming a health coach and working with people. And the prize for me now is taking the things I learn and don't get the wrong idea. Like I'm still learning things every day. Like I'm still exploring. This is a field that you don't just say, I got it, that's it, I know the answers. Because as soon as you say that, you start to realize that you don't know anything and you have to ask more questions. But now I can use that knowledge to help other people. And the prize is seeing other people now not only get better, but watch their lives elevate and hear their stories and watch them overcome nagging injuries and nagging health issues, and really live the life that they've imagined living for a long time.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm following you. It sounds like it's a passion of yours, and nutrition's such an important theme in the overall health. I mean, what's the point of having a bunch of money or success if you're unhealthy and can't enjoy it? So we're definitely there. Interesting. So it came out of kind of a necessity that you learned. So we could go many different directions. Maybe you start with this. What is holistic? How would you define that? What does that mean to you? Maybe people are out there like me, not fully aware.
Sure. That's a great question, because, holistic is a buzzword, and I find that people react to it differently. Some people are all on board, and some people think it's woo-woo and think it's, think it's crazy and think it's conspiracy theory, and it's pretty nutty. But to me, holistic really means the full organism, right? So mind, body, spirit. It's about understanding the connection that all of these different parts, in relation to health, all the different parts of your body have, like, for instance, gut health is a great example, because the gut, is known as the second brain, because you have the enteric nervous system. The gut and the mind are inextricably linked. Your gut health will directly influence your brain health. So, in allopathic medicine, the biggest problem with allopathic medicine, and, not to come off talking negative about doctors, because there's amazing doctors out there, and I believe Western medicine, undoubtedly has its place. There's like, where would we be if you had got injured, you couldn't go to the emergency room, right? That's what the doctor's for emergency medicine and for really maintenance medicine. But when you start understanding holistic, you start to understand that all of these things are connected, and you can't do one thing without affecting the other. And the failure of Western medicine is that it's fighting symptoms. It's playing whack-a-mole with symptoms. Hey, are you feeling depressed? Take an antidepressant. Hey, do you have a gut problem? Well, take a medication. Hey, do you have high cholesterol? Take cholesterol-lowering medication. When you talk about holistic, what you do is you start investigating all of the different issues, all of the different elements that go into a person's health. And you start to also empathize. You start to understand, not just what are you coming to me for, but where have you been? What is your diet? What is your history? As a practitioner, I look at people's genetics. I look at different tests. I look at, I give people food journals, so I'm not just saying, well, this is the problem, this is the solution. I'm saying, well, you have a couple of habits here that might be contributing to this. So it's really a holistic way of looking at things. It's really understanding the connections between different parts of the body, different parts of the mind, different parts of the spirit.
That's key. I'm following you on that, and that's not how it's traditionally taught, or that's not how I've heard it explained. So, yeah, maybe let's get into. I'm sure other people are curious, like me, the connection of gut health in the mind. You've mentioned it a few times. Can you get more specific in, like, what is that? Can you break that down?
Absolutely. So, if you're going to talk about the mind-body connection, okay, and specifically the gut, I mean, the first place you start is the fact that the neurotransmitters, right? Serotonin, okay? So serotonin is essentially the neurotransmitter in your brain that, I don't want to say it makes you happy, but it makes you happy. It's what basically chemically allows you, makes you smile. It's what makes you want to have connection. It's what gets you up in the morning. It's what makes you optimistic. It's what, gives us a lot of our drive. It's genuinely what makes you have that feeling that you can live in a world of peace and optimism. And that neurotransmitter is made in your gut. 90% of the serotonin that ends up in your brain is made in your gut, which is amazing. And this is the failure of allopathic medicine, is that when you go to a psychiatrist and they diagnose you with depression, and by the way, depression is a multifaceted issue. A lot of depression sometimes could be, a thyroid issue for a lot of women who have hypothyroid or Hashimoto's. You know, if your thyroid is not physically converting T4 to T3 and then actually getting the T3 to the cell, your cells, your mitochondria is not making enough ATP. It's not making enough energy. So of course you're gonna feel like shit. So the doctor looks at you and he says, well, you need an antidepressant. And most antidepressants that are given to people are SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And the whole point of those drugs is to go to your brain and essentially manipulate it in a way that the brain takes serotonin, it processes it, and it flushes it out. This is the natural process of the brain. But what the SSRI does is it traps the serotonin in the brain. And so what happens there is, instead of actually going to the root source, which is your gut, which is the factory of serotonin, they say, well, let's take the serotonin you're making and trap it in the brain. And the serotonin, it's a neurotransmitter. It's a very, you know, complicated science, and it starts docking to all of these other receptors in the brain. And this is why when you look at an insert on an antidepressant, they say, well, here's all the side effects. And believe it or not, one of the side effects of an antidepressant is depression. Does that make any sense? Right? Wow. That's like them saying, hey, you know what a side effect of running is? Gaining weight, right? A side effect of building a house is the house might just fall apart, you know? It's a crazy thing that we do to ourselves. But serotonin's made in the gut. So a lot of people deal with serious gut issues, and that makes sense because the Western diet, the standard American diet, is absolute dog shit. It's been, you know, corporatized. It's been, you know, hijacked by big food companies who are more concerned. And I have no problem with capitalism or anything. I know we all got to make our money, but the way that food companies design food, it's a science. They design food to get you addicted, so you buy more food. You know, they put excess amounts of high fructose corn syrup, and they put chemicals and dyes and fillers and all these things that literally go into the brain, hijack it, and make you want more of the food, right? This is why, who is it, Lay's potato chips or whatever it is, like, bet you can't eat just one. You're gonna win that bet every time because you can't eat just one. They designed it. They have very smart people designing that food to make sure you cannot eat just one. You know, find me the person who takes a sleeve of Oreos and doesn't crush at least half the sleeve, right? I would like to find the person who's ever eaten one Oreo, and then put the sleeve back. It doesn't happen because this is the way food is designed. So when we eat that kind of food, it goes into the gut. The body is a 2 million-year-old organism, and it's looking at chemicals that have only been around for really the last 50 years, and it doesn't know what to do with it. And what you start getting are issues like the biggest one being leaky gut, where the tight junctions in the gut actually start breaking apart. And by the way, you're going to hear the term leaky gut a lot in the holistic health world. It's a complicated matter. By nature, the gut does get a little leaky. It's supposed to open a little bit. But what's happened is in the standard American diet and way of eating, we've just kept that junction open too long. So you literally start having food particles falling out of the gut. They go into the bloodstream. You activate the immune system, because here's a fun fact about the immune system. 70% of the immune system lives on the gut lining. So the second a piece of food falls out of the gut, it triggers the immune system. And the immune system's like, what the fuck is this? This is a piece of food. This isn't like a pathogen. It thinks it's a pathogen. And a lot of food actually mimics, you know, parts of your body, like gluten, for instance, mimics thyroid hormone. In the body, it looks, the immune system, it's like a chameleon. It poses itself to look just like thyroid hormone, which is why a lot of people who have thyroid problems are also gluten sensitive, because the immune system battles it reacts to the thyroid because it thinks there's thyroid. It thinks the thyroid is a pathogen. So with all of this said, with all of this, the reason the gut and the brain are connected is because of the enteric nervous system. There's a nerve that runs from your gut to your brain. It's called the vagus nerve. And if your gut isn't optimized, this nerve isn't going to work right, which means you're not going to get, again, the serotonin and all the neurotransmitters that go to your brain to work properly. And then if you have certain, you know, gut bacteria, you know, what happens is that reacts with certain chemicals in your brain, and you don't get proper neurotransmitter enzymatic reactions, and you don't make, you know, enough dopamine, you don't make enough norepinephrine, and this is why people start to feel down. So hopefully that answers your question. It's a complicated matter, as you could probably tell, but you know, as we learn more about it, and this isn't to say that we know for sure, because every day more and more information comes out about how the microbiome works, how gut bacteria works, why it's so important. This is why during this pandemic, I haven't used hand sanitizer one time, Drew. Not one time. I refuse to use it. In my building, they want us to use hands. There's no way. That stuff is poison. It's literally the worst thing you can do to your body. That and antibiotics, because the bacteria, it's an organism, bro. Your body is 10 to 1 gut bacteria to human cells. You are technically more bacteria than you are human. That's fucking wild. You're an alien, right? And what they want you to do is they want you to take these pills that wipe out the biggest hub of where your bacteria is, your gut. You literally nuclear bombing the bacteria on your skin and your hand. And typically, a lot of people who use antibiotics end up with serious infections down the road. Unless you're doing it properly and supplementing with a good quality probiotic. But it's the same thing on the skin. If you start putting hand sanitizer on the skin, you start disrupting the environment of these delicate bacteria, and you could really do a lot of damage. So so it's very important to understand, at least have a baseline understanding of these things.
Sure. I think you just dropped a lot of knowledge on me and those that are watching. Keep on commenting and let us know if you have a specific question in the notes. We'll try to get to it. You definitely used a lot of words I'm not familiar with, to be real with you. But
Sure.
I think the general, but that's good. I mean, that's the education process works. So there's probably a lot of people out there thinking what I'm thinking right now is like, so what does that mean? What would you recommend? What's kind of the right eating, regiment that you would suggest to kind of go in alignment with? Because I'm understanding you're kind of like zero processed food type mentality, but can you kind of just walk us through what a diet would look like to have kind of a healthy body?
Sure. I am a believer in a phrase called bio-individuality. And what that means is it's essentially respecting the fact that everybody's different. Everybody has a different genome. Everybody has a different epigenome, which means, you've literally been in completely different places than everybody else. You've eaten completely different things than everybody else. Everybody's different. And this is why I have an issue with the idea of, is there a perfect diet, right? I know that wasn't your question, but a lot of people ask me that, right? Like, so what should I eat? What should we eat? What's the perfect diet? Should I be a vegan? Should I do keto? Should I go low fat? Should I go low carb? Should I fast? And for everybody, it's different. And there's a lot of people out there who are making a lot of money giving strangers nutrition advice. And people are taking that advice. And I tell you, man, a lot of people I work with, they're not what you would call unhealthy people. They're not people who are just sitting on the couch and they're eating Cheetos all day, So, I mean, granted, I am working with those people, but a lot of the people I work with are people who have been down the diet rabbit hole. A lot of people I've worked with have been in and out of doctors' offices. They've been trying literally everything. They gave up meat. They went only meat. They did the keto diet. They did everything. And every time I talk to them, the reason they do these things is because they saw it online. They saw a video. They read a blog. They had a friend who did it. It's like all of us probably have at least one friend who did the keto diet and has the body of a Roman, of like a Greek god. You're like, how the hell did you do that, man? You're ripped. How did you do that, right? And then they're like, well, it's easy. I did keto. Well, how do you do keto? Well, you don't eat carbs. And so what do a lot of people do? They go to the Supermax or they go to the store and they load up on chicken, and they load up on bologna and string cheese and all of these keto chips and keto coconut ice creams and all the keto junk food. And then 2 months later, they're like, I feel like shit. I can't get up in the morning. I feel depressed. I've gained 5 pounds. And it's because you didn't do the diet right. But even more so, your body wasn't ready for keto. Your body's not built for keto. And it's the same thing with vegans. I was a vegan for 2 years. And I love the idea of the diet, but it really fucked me up. It really messed me up because, when I went to a functional doctor, 6 months later after I stopped doing it, my B12 levels were dropped to the floor. And B12 is such an important micronutrient to get in the body. It's involved in so many metabolic processes. So really, if you are the type of person who's wondering, well, what is the perfect diet? What you have to do is you have to either really understand nutrition and how to interpret different tests, or go to a practitioner and get these tests. Get a blood panel, right? Know where you're starting from. Know what your blood sugar is. Know how your kidneys are functioning. Know how your liver is functioning. The big tests that I run are is an organic acids test, which is a test that measures the results of different metabolic processes in your body. And if you'd love to do keto, one thing I can tell from an organic acids test is if your body is reacting properly to keto. I can see in an organic acids test if your body's making the right neurotransmitters for you to be happy, if you have a disbalance of gut bacteria, if you have high levels of things like oxalates, which completely sabotage your body's ability to process nutrients. And I also run hair mineral tests, which I can tell somebody's mineral balance, which the body's 70% minerals, right? So if you don't know what your mineral status is, you need to know that if you want to eat the quote unquote healthy diet. You need to know, through a mineral test, is my adrenal glands working right? Is my thyroid working right? Do I have enough magnesium, sodium? Do I have enough potassium chloride? Do I have enough of the electrolytes? And then also I can tell if you have heavy metal toxicity. A lot of people in Puerto Rico are walking around with high mercury, high lead, high cadmium, especially if you're drinking tap water. These are dangerous chemicals you got to get out of you, especially if you're dealing with chronic health issues. And you can't just blindly do a detox if you don't even know what you're detoxing for in the first place, right? And every diet can be considered a detox in a way. So again, the perfect diet really comes down to who are you? What is your history? What is your genome? Where are you starting from? What is your diet? And then you start to go with that.
So I'm hearing you say that it requires more of a personalized approach to understand what, might be the cause of the problem, and, the traditional, big pharma solution of just throwing a pill at it solves only the issue. But your approach is to go to the source, figure out lifestyle, eating habits, and coach somebody through how to make those choices. Would that sound
Exactly?
accurate?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of people who are capable of doing this on their own. I come across a lot of people who are very well versed. They're not practitioners. They're just, I guess you would call them citizen scientists. And they just are up to they understand, how food works. They've read the studies. They've pulled up the studies on PubMed. They know how to read the stuff. They follow the right people. They listen to the right, doctors and researchers and scientists. But a lot of people, I would say most people, just don't understand how to put together the right diet for them, and also how to monitor their own progress on the diet. And this is a thing that I struggle with myself. It's like you have to be cognizant of the fact that, well, I feel great on this diet, but my sleep is jacked. I've got skin issues. From time to time I'll get bloated. I'm constipated sometimes. Why do I need to take a nap every day for 2 hours? Those are real issues, and those are signs of bigger things. So, sometimes you do need a third party to come in and kind of evaluate you from the outside. I need a practitioner to evaluate me sometimes from the outside. So, you really, if you want to do it right, you want to get as much knowledge in the situation, in your healthcare, as you can. You don't want to just kind of poke and prod and play whack-a-mole and buy supplements that are made, by some shady factory in the middle of the country using garbage ingredients. That's the other thing too, people with their supplements, supplements are no joke, man. Some of them are pharmaceutical grade. You can really jack your body up with some supplements if you don't know what you're doing. And some people will have, just cabinets full of supplements, and they just don't know what they're doing. You should use a supplement for a specific purpose for a limited amount of time, and then you should be able to monitor, readjust, and move on.
Got it. Yep. This is good. So a lot of information and a lot of questions that we didn't have a chance to get through, like, regarding, how animals are being treated during the process and what that can lead to, how protein affects mental health. We were talking about that last night, blood sugar and its ties to stress and anxiety. So many things that we could go into. We don't have time at the moment. So you've been kind of alluding to the you have coaching services. There's obviously a lot of coaches out there. I think the key part is, just like we all can relate back in high school when maybe we played a sport, and the importance of a coach because he was on the outside looking in and can give you kind of a perspective. And because you've done so much research and been down this rabbit hole of understanding holistic side of living and how it can improve your overall lifestyle, I think there's a real advantage of having a coach. So I personally, you've sent out a few different kind of exams, kind of, health assessments that I took and that you were able to interpret. So I know we were discussing this, that for anybody that's listening, we're going to put a link below where you can to essentially take the assessments for free. And then Eric, you would give them like a 30-minute free consultation to kind of like read the results.
Yeah. So what I do is I have a health assessment questionnaire, and you've taken it. It's about 300 questions, and it sounds daunting, but it's just asking you about different symptoms that you deal with, and a lot of these symptoms are things that people just kind of assume are just kind of day-to-day things. It's like, do you get gassy? Do you feel bloated after you eat something? Do you get buzzed off of red wine? Things like this, right? That people say, well, I thought that was normal. And, a lot of these things are signs of bigger issues, because again, I work with the foundation of the body, right? So the symptoms really tell me are indicators for different things going on. And with a 300 question assessment, I can really understand what's happening with your body. So again, I'm eliminating a lot of guessing and poking and prodding. I'm getting right down to the data. So this assessment, for people watching, I can give that to you for free. What I'll have people do is just actually email me directly, and then I'll send them the link to do that. And then what I'll do is I'll jump on a 30-minute call and just kind of go through those, go through the results. And you'll have a nice printout. So the way it breaks down is it kind of shows you the different, believe there's like 13 different parts of the body. It's like the gut, the liver, the thyroid, sugar handling, adrenal health, vitamin needs, mineral needs. And we can see, based on the results of that questionnaire, where your highest priorities are. So again, if you're trying to get healthy, or if you're just trying to improve your health, or if you're just trying to work on some nagging health issues, you can see, and this data is pretty accurate. It's not a blood panel. It's not, a urine panel or anything like that. It's just basic data, but gives you a visual of where you need to start from, or where you should start from if you're trying to improve your health. I'll jump on a call with you, go through that, and kind of interpret it a little bit. And then, if you want to work with me further, for more detailed ways to actually put together a diet and then monitor that and actually kind of help you really, jumpstart your health, we can talk about that on that call.
Cool. Well, good. I think one of the biggest takeaways when I took that exam and we had the conversation was just realizing that, there's certain things that you might experience in your body, or I was, that you're like, that's actually not normal, and we can fix that type mentality. And some people go throughout their life just thinking that's just how they have to be because they never maybe voiced it, or maybe they have a high pain tolerance or something. So I think there's value in that for sure. Well, in wrapping up, appreciate you coming on. I think you got a lot of wealth of knowledge. Again, check out his site. It's holisticnootropics.com, right?
You can so my blog is holisticnootropics.com. But my coaching site is it's eriklevinutrition.com, or for people in Puerto Rico, I made it easy, PuertoRicoHealthCoach.com. So you can go there, you can see that's all my coaching stuff, my testimonials, my services. And if you like what you see, you can shoot me a message through the form on the website, or you'll drop my email here in the comments, and then you can just email me directly there, and we'll set it all up.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming on, Erik.
Yeah, Drew, thanks so much. This was a great time.
Yeah. Again, thank you everybody for joining. We're going to be doing these next week. We already have new speakers lined up that we'll be announcing. You're not going to want to miss it. Share, like, subscribe. This is meant to be for you, community-driven project. And, you know, we're trying to highlight entrepreneurs that are making things happen and that are adjusting to these difficult situations and thriving through it. And a lot of it has to do, you know, with your mental state. And together, the idea of sharing ideas, even if it's in a field that's not one you're in, you can leave more educated and wise, and kind of learn tips that you might not. So comment below, let us know topics or themes that you would be of value, and or maybe additional nutrition questions that haven't been answered, whatever. This is for you. So you can find us on Instagram, on Facebook at Uncommon Entrepreneurs, and so forth, on YouTube under the same. And until next week, we'll see you guys. Thanks for tuning in.